Live.
Live. We live.
We're live.
And
Welcome back.
welcome back.
Welcome back to session 6 of the Tactics Project, and we are excited to have you guys here. This is our last one.
Last one, man. It's crazy.
A little bittersweet,
Yeah.
but it's going to be great. And we have a special guest today. I'll let him introduce himself. He's a fan of ice cream and mountain biking enthusiast.
Yes.
And loves nature. So
Not true.
you can introduce yourself.
Yeah. My name is Trevor. On staff at Call to Greatness, and I got the privilege of serving the Baker campus and the campus at Fort Scott. So I'm excited to be here on the last week.
Great to have you. And like I said, we have a great finish today for the last 3 chapters. We're going to be kind of diving into what do we do when we come up to a conversation, an argument with someone that's just trying to steamroll us and plow us over with an argument, and we're not allowed to talk because they're just steamrolling us. So we're going to talk about how we respond to that, how we respond to opinions and alleged facts, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, and again, man, our heart for this series is for that you guys to be equipped to go out into your families, into your classrooms, into your teams, your workplace, and have good, healthy dialogue and really point people to the truth of who Jesus Christ is. So we're really excited for you guys to really take these last 6 weeks and really be impactful in the world around you.
That's great. Always a good reminder. So before we dive in, let's recap last week's session 5 with Ruthie and Kyle. They did a great job.
My wife, Ruthie, she did a great
That is
job.
your wife. That's pretty awesome. They did a great job of talking about taking the roof off, and if you got to hear them sing, that was pretty cool too, I guess.
Beautiful.
It was beautiful. But essentially, taking the roof off is when someone makes a claim, and if it's taken serious, essentially it won't hold up. So it will lead to counterintuitive or almost just absurd results. So if someone makes a claim, it's taken serious, you start to ask questions, and at the end, the argument doesn't hold up. So, and they give 3 things that you can do if you're in this conversation.
Why don't you remember?
I can tell you, I have it here,
Appreciate it, man.
So one of the things that you can do is reduce the point to the basic argument. So bring it back to what they're actually talking about. The second thing you can do is give the idea a test drive to see if it holds up. I had to do the air quotes there.
Love it.
And then the last thing that they say you can do is invite the person to consider the implications of the claim that they're making. So these are 3 things you can do if someone's making a claim and it's taken serious. And that wraps it up.
Awesome. Now we know that you guys have been having great conversations everywhere using these wonderful tactic skills and principles. So enough of us talking. We actually have a special guest here today.
We do.
We want to share with you guys about. Her name is Riley Davis. She attends the University of Kansas.
Riley.
And she's going to be our special guest, just sharing about how she's able to use some of the tactics that she does.
Yeah, so let's welcome Riley.
Let's welcome Riley.
Oh, here she is.
She's
Okay.
behind us.
She's coming from us from Texas, down south. I'm going to try to get you in there close.
I had a really good conversation with my sister 2 weeks ago, probably. We were talking about like friendships and relationships, and more specifically like our friendship and relationship. And in tactics, we were talking about just like putting a stone in somebody's shoe and like, what do you mean by that, and how to execute that well. And so in this particular conversation, I had prompted the "what do you mean by that" question. And she had made a statement that I was then able to turn around into a question using her own words for her. And she just had no response. And so the question and the conversation just kind of died, truthfully, and it didn't really go anywhere. And so I left feeling just super defeated and just like, oh, what if I had done this and I should have done this and said this or waited or whatever. And so fast forward like a week after, neither one of us had really brought it up or talked about it. And she brought it up while we were together one day, and it was just like, hey, this conversation that you asked, or the question you asked me, I can't stop thinking about it. And we were just able to have like this super good conversation about where she was coming from and where I was coming from, and it just led to this multitude of conversations that we were able to have on an even better understanding of each other because of this question that I had prompted. And so it was really cool to see that, like, while I had been living in this, like, oh man, I did it wrong, I like should have done this better, that she was like, God was doing something in her heart the whole week that I like had no like realization of until she had said something. And so that's been really cool and life-giving to just like continue to have those conversations with her.
Awesome. Wow.
Thanks, Riley.
Thanks,
for being
Riley.
here.
Thanks for
We
coming.
appreciate you.
Yeah, we appreciate you a lot.
That's a great story, and I love how she does her part with taking a step of faith and having conversation, but God also is working and moving in her sister's life during that week, you know, so it's just a great
My
story.
faith is being built up. Is yours being built up?
We're building up, dude.
Like freaking about to build it out here.
Okay, what's the line there?
Can we build it?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
We can build it. All right, so let's dive into this week's material. You should be reading chapters 14 to 16 if you have the new edition, and chapters 11 to 13 if you have the older version. And like I said, really good stuff this week. So Trevor, do you want to kick us off and talk about chapter 14, Steamroller?
Yeah, absolutely. Now we know that you guys have been going out and practicing all these wonderful tactics and strategies. And sometimes, man, you can give the best strategy, the best verbiage, the best words to a person, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And the reason is because this person is kind of hell-bent on steamrolling you essentially, and they don't want to hear your side. They just want to argue their side, and that's it. So this chapter really gives out some practical ways that we can handle people what we call steamrollers.
Yeah, that's great. So before we move into how do we handle these situations, we should be asking the question maybe like, why do people react the way they do? Why do people not engage with us, or try to steamroll us in a conversation?
Great question.
And luckily, the questions that I ask here, the author answers, which is really nice.
That's so
And
neat.
I'm going to tell you guys, so there's 3 things that he lays out. So the first one he says is, first, people have an emotional reason to resist. All right, so I think this is really important to understand because people are coming in with previous pain and hurt into the conversation. And so maybe it's someone that has been hurt by the church or has been hurt by a conversation they had with a Christian friend, but they're bringing these in, and it might be just too hard of a burden to bear for them when they come into these conversations. So we need to be mindful of just, hey, something a little deeper is going on. It's just not face value here. So that's the first thing, emotional reasons to resist. The second thing the author says is that, let me find it, people have prejudices that cause them to avoid engaging. So some people's minds are pretty much already made up when they come to the conversation. They're just like, hey, this is how I think, this is how it's going to be, and my mind's not going to be changed. And that can be very hard to have conversation with those kind of people.
Yeah.
And then the last reason he gives is that sometimes it comes down to simple obedience is the verbiage he uses. So sometimes, we can say everything we need to say, we can make a great argument, but they just are simply rebellious. And the author gives a great quote that I want to read here. It says, quote, "But at the end of the day, a person's deep-seated rebellion against God is a problem only a supernatural solution can fix." So I love that. Like sometimes we just need to be aware of what the Holy Spirit's doing and just like intercede and pray for them in the Spirit. And so those are the 3 things that he gives of why people respond the way they do.
Yeah, I love what you just said, man, because I think oftentimes we have to remember that the strategies that we use in our conversations, they don't happen in a vacuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have God working in people's hearts and people's minds. So we got to be really important that we're maintaining an awareness of God's Spirit moving in people.
Yeah. So good.
Those three things you just listed reminded me of a story about when I was on the college campus at KU, going out and doing evangelism on the college campus. I encountered a peer one day, and we were just discussing about life, and then I transitioned the conversation into faith and Jesus, and the conversation went from a 4 to a 10. He began to like blow up on me about how he used to be involved in church and how some shady stuff went on, and then he begins to give me facts and all these statistics about why Christianity is false religion and why it's the root of a lot of evil in this world. And he went on for about 10 minutes just kind of coming at me, like being a steamroller. But to the point of like really part of the Holy Spirit, in that moment, I realized that he was probably a lot smarter than I was, and I didn't want to get back into a debate of me just challenging everything he was saying. But I want to go back to his original point about like, man, his encounter with the church. And the Holy Spirit just kind of led me back to that moment. I was able to have a conversation with him. He went from a 10 to back to a 4, and we had able to dialogue about his experience in the church. And I was able to pray for him and encourage him. And I don't know where that guy is. He didn't give his life to Jesus in that moment, but it was really cool to partner with the Holy Spirit and bring it back to the point. It's like, hey man, like God wants to bring restoration to the hurt that you felt. Yeah. More so than just debating him the facts and stuff. So it was really cool to partner with Jesus.
That's great. It's a great example of, him coming in with that emotion, that's for him to resist the conversation and some pain and hurt there. And you're able to partner, like you said, with the Holy Spirit, which is awesome. So, with knowing these reasons why people resist conversation or just don't engage very well, how do we respond? Like, what's our plan of attack when we're kind of being steamrolled up into a corner, but we want to stay in the driver's seat, like we've talked about a lot. Like, how do we respond to that?
Man, I'm glad you asked, Alex. Yeah, it's crazy though. You asked the question again. The book has this.
Yeah, it does. That's
crazy.
It is wild.
Pretty wild. It's like we're playing this or something. But yeah, so man, the book does a really good job on helping us give us some steps on how to manage steamrollers. And if you're like me, I'm a guy that doesn't really enjoy conflict or like it at all. So in going through this chapter, I'm like, oh man, cringy. What do I do? How do I do this? The author actually says that it's going to take some courage and some intestinal fortitude to actually apply these steps on how to handle a steamroller. But I'm just so encouraged that, man, the creator of all things lives on the inside of all of us. Yeah. He's going to give us the boldness necessary to accomplish these steps.
It's good.
So step one is to actually to stop the person and pause the conversation and set up some guidelines. It could be like, hey, man, like I'm so grateful you're sharing your point, but how about I hear you out, and then you allow me to respond to your point. And we can go back and forth in dialogue like that. Step two is to be used if that does work. Let's say you kind of made you made these guidelines, and then the other person is still being steamrollery. I made that word up.
That's a good word.
Yeah, it's a great word. They're still coming at you. You can say, hey man, you can challenge them in that moment or shame them, as the book says. Say, hey man, we made these guidelines, and you're not abiding by them. I said that I will listen to you if you will listen to me, and right now all it seems like is that you're just talking at me. And then finally, the last step is like, hey, is to leave in grace and quietly disengage from the conversation and walk away. And I love what the author says. It says allow the other person to have the last word. And I was like, that really challenged me because I'm like, I want to have the last word. I want to have that mic drop, moment. But it's like, man, it's not about me winning it, but it's about me demonstrating God's love and His grace for the person that we're talking to. So those are some ways that we can engage.
That's great. Yeah, and I think I love your story that you said too, because I think even in the first step, the author mentions like, hey, you can go back to something that earlier in the conversation that the person said, which is what you did. You brought it back to something earlier on, which kind of calmed down the conversation a little bit, which I love. So stop, challenge, and leave. Easy way to remember this instead is stop, drop, and roll. That's how I think of it. Just made that up, but it's like, if you're in a fire, that's what you do. And in a conversation that gets fiery, stop, challenge, and leave. It's kind of a little fun thing to remember. So
I really hope we use your acronym a lot more than we actually use stop, drop, and roll.
Yeah.
The way that they taught it to us in school, I would think that I would catch on fire a lot more than I actually have. I've actually never caught on fire.
That's good.
That's actually a great thing.
Great. Yeah.
It was kind of taught like something that happened pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not.
Maybe we can have more fiery conversations.
Oh,
You know?
come on.
It'd be great. Okay, let's transition into the next chapter. And I'm going to paint a picture for you.
Okay.
That's all right, Trevor?
Can I close my eyes?
Yeah, close your eyes.
I just wanna get there.
Just imagine like you're there.
Yeah.
You know, you're curled up in your beanbag chair, snuggled in. You have hot chocolate in your right hand and your cookie two-step Bluebell, which I know you love, in your left hand, by a fireplace, and it's Christmas Eve. All right, and actually, you don't have those things in your hand because you have a newspaper. Maybe you set them down or something. And you're reading the news, the weekend news, and the opinion section says the untold truth about the first Christmas. And the article goes on to give scientific evidence for why, you know, the Christmas story we believe as Christians is not true, made up, you know, it's a hoax. And you're just reading this and you're like, what do I think here? You know, like, what do I believe? What do I do with this? And so this is kind of the trajectory that the chapter is going in. What if someone brings scholarly opinion, kind of like the article, into our actual conversation or argument? What do we do with that? You know?
Yeah. I want to respond to that, but before I do that, I just want to say you painted that picture so beautifully. Man. I felt like I was right there.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, I felt like I needed to back up from the fire. It was a little too hot.
Yeah. Smell the hot chocolate.
Yeah, for sure. All of that, man. But yeah, man, I really love this chapter because it kind of brings everything full circle. If you guys remember early on, as we were beginning this book, the Columbo tactic, like one of the main strategies was to ask good questions. And now we're just bringing that back to this chapter, but we're asking these good questions in the face of scholars and expert witnesses. And we're asking questions like, and how did you get to that conclusion? And what are the facts specifically? And asking questions like, are there any biases that seem to distort the assessment that someone has made? And like, these aren't to be, manipulative or, malicious questions, but we're really trying to get to the heart of it and have a really healthy dialogue. And so, yeah, like, it's not necessarily to win the conversation, but also just to really engage well and poke holes in people's worldviews.
Yeah, that's great. That's so good. And I love, like you said, how it comes full circle. It goes back to the basics of the first, 3 chapters of asking good questions. How did you come to that conclusion? What do you mean by that? Which might be annoying by now at this point, but it's like, man, those are very effective. Yeah. Back to the basics. And so I want to wrap this chapter up with a quick quote that I read. So he says, "Don't be shaken by academic appeals. What an expert believes is not as important as why he believes it. Fancy credentials are not enough. What matters most are the reasons, not merely the opinions." So I love how he says, hey, let's continue to get to, man, why do you believe that? Like, why are you making these claims in this argument?
Yeah.
It's a great quote.
Great quote, man.
I think it sums it up nicely. So this is really random, guys, but Trevor, I just have to say this on live YouTube studio, whatever we're on. I just think that people who eat single stuffed Oreos are just kind of dumb and dull, honestly. So I felt like I had to say that.
Okay.
But
well, honestly, I don't know if I disagree with you, man, but you gotta stick with the facts, bro. Like,
yeah.
Good and well, there's people that eat single stuff that are probably a lot smarter than you do, man. So you can't call all the people that eat single stuff dumb.
Yeah, you're right.
Even though I don't understand either. Why would you pay the same price
less
for
stuff?
less stuff? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But anywho, much like I'm reminding you to stick to the facts, this last chapter reminds me to stick to the facts.
Okay.
As well.
Yeah. Transition into that. All right.
Yeah. So chapter 16 encourages us to really think this way. And oftentimes, people will make challenges to our beliefs and to our faith using misinformation or error. So it's very important that we ask these 2 questions. The first question is, man, what is your precise claim? And the second is, man, is this claim accurate? In the situation we had with Alec, man, his claim was that people that ate, single stuff Oreos were dull and stupid. All right, so that was his claim, but is that claim accurate? No, it's not at all. We understand that. We can just that by common sense, or we can just Google, things.
Yeah. No, it's true. And like you said, let's just continue to ask good questions.
Yeah.
And steer the conversation where we want it to go. So someone makes a claim and they spit out all these facts. just ask yourself. You don't ask the person, but you can just be asking yourself, like, man, is this true? You know, are these facts actually true, or are they just alleged? You know, they're just stuff they're saying. So, yeah, and like you said, you know, internet, Google, it's always your friend. You know, so use references. Let's make sure we listen well to people, read critically, reflect on claims, and check background information. I know this sounds like a lot of work, but you know, if we want to be people that are about this, like we can put in extra, you know, intentionality and effort to do this.
Yes, sir. Let's be about that life now. Come on.
About it.
Come on, about it.
I like it.
Yeah. So, man, that's all we have for you guys this week. Man, we're so encouraged that you guys have been here with us all 6 weeks. We're going to finish up this final week with your small groups. And we have a challenge for you guys, man. We want you to pray and ask God that He will put someone that's a challenger, or someone that's dominant, or someone that's an expert in the field to really challenge you so you can practice using your steamroller defusing tactics. So, man, just pray in faith and just believe that God's going to give you opportunities this week to practice it.
It's a little daunting when I first hear that, you know.
Yeah, me too.
But it's going to be great. We're going to do it with you. That concludes the tactics project over the summer. Hopefully you guys, you know, grew a lot, was stretched in your faith, and we're really believing this is going to be a launching pad for you guys for many
Launching pad
conversations to come this next year. So thank you guys. It's been great. We'll see you.
Peace.